Meet the Pilgrims and Wampanoag. Housing. Pilgrim houses were made of a wood frame and then covered with wood boards. They looked much like a cottage. Each house had one main room and a sleeping area above the main room. These houses were about 800 square feet. The Wampanoag lived in huts called weetus. Weetus were made from saplings that were bent into a dome shape. The weetu was then covered with grass in the summer and bark in the winter. Inside the weetu were woven mats for sleeping and animal skin blankets. There was also a fireplace in the middle of the room. Clothing. The Wampanoag wore much less clothing than the Pilgrims. The men wore just a deerskin loincloth. For special times, they added deerskin leggings and a headdress. Both men and women wore jewelry made from shells, stones, and bones. Pilgrims had to wear many layers of clothing. The girls had to wear garters to hold up stockings and then 2 petticoats. After putting on their petticoats, they would add their long-sleeve shirt jacket, an apron, shoes, and a pocket. Pockets were not sewn into clothes as they are today, so pilgrims had to tie them around their waists. Boys wore almost as much as girls. Boys wore garters to hold their stockings. They also wore a shirt jacket and had to lace their pants through their jacket to hold them up. All of these clothes were hand-sewn, as there were no sewing machines back then. Food. Pilgrims ate a lot of water birds, such as duck. They also ate mussels, a shellfish related to snails. Duck or mussels would have been served with cornbread or a hasty pudding, oatmeal cereal. They also ate much of their food with their hands since they didn't have forks. The Wampanoag would hunt rabbit, squirrel, turkey, and deer. The women would use this meat to make a meat stew over the fire. Wampanoag were also great fishermen. Chores. Pilgrim and Wampanoag children had many chores. The Pilgrims planted rye, which would have to be harvested. The grains then had to be ground into flour. Pilgrim girls also had to muck the garden. They would have to scoop animal droppings into the garden to fertilize the soil. The Wampanoag would move their entire camp to a warmer place in the winter. Everything had to be moved except some of their food, which they buried underground. Both Pilgrim and Wampanoag children would have to gather firewood and fetch water every day. School and games. There were no Pilgrim or Wampanoag schools. Children learned lessons at home from their parents. Most of the Pilgrim children's lessons were focused on the Bible. Wampanoag children were taught how to survive. The boys were taught to hunt with bows and arrow and a stone knife. Girls were taught to make needed items, such as clothing and jewelry. Although there wasn't a lot of time for games with so many chores to do, both Pilgrim and Wampanoag children still had their favorites. Pilgrim children played a marble game called Knickerbox. Wampanoag children played a pin game. In the pin game, the children tried to toss a ring tied to the bottom of a stick over the top of a stick.